Hey, this is Matt Wenning at WenningStrength.com.
This is Julius Maddox at IrregularStrength.com.
Today, we're going to talk about some different topics that we don't hear talked about a lot, and we actually were just talking about it this morning and came up with this idea. And the difference in mentality for a full power meet guy versus a bench only guy, I think it's really interesting because, you know, I did a lot of my meets full power. I benched 6'11" after squatting an all-time world record. Maddox has got the all-time world record in the bench by well over 50 pounds. So it's one of those things where it's funny that we share some similarities and some key differences on how to train. I find that the differences on the surface for a full power guy is you might be squatting at 9 or 10 in the morning, and then you're not going to bench till like 1 or 2 if it's a big national meet, say with 60, 80 lifters in it in a day, which is not uncommon. And then you may not deadlift until 6, 7, 8. I've even deadlifted somewhere around midnight at night, which is just totally insane. So what I found is that I had to slowly ramp myself up to squat. Then I had to completely get out of the entire environment, go back to my hotel room and have watchers at the competition let me know when I was about an hour away from competing again, and just get out of that zone real quick and let my body recuperate. Because what I started to realize is that it was an all-day marathon, and that I had these peaks points of about, I needed to be at a hot spot for about 45 minutes 3 times, separated between anywhere between 2 to 4 hours apart, which just made it completely insane. And then you don't want to eat those days because your adrenaline's up, you're pushing hard, and to turn that adrenaline off and get more food, fuel, and electrolytes in you can be difficult because you're kind of in that fight or flight mode.
I never understood how full power lifters, and I guess that's something that I learned or that you trained yourself to do, but be able to eat multiple times throughout the day. Usually whenever I'm going up, I mean, typically bench press is second following squats, but I can't eat. I can't eat before, I can't eat after, so it just makes it extremely hard for me to be able to, because a lot of time by the second attempt, I'm so full of caffeine and I'm so anxious that I could feel myself blocking in and out. I've always commended full power lifters simply because of the stuff that they have to put their bodies through.
The big difference is, like I said, in the bench only, you only have to ramp yourself up for about an hour, because once your flight hits, you're probably going to bench about every 12 to 15 minutes 3 times and you're done. And the big thing I noticed with full power is that I had to get as big and as many calories as I possibly could get in right after I weighed in. Because that day before, the nerves hadn't set in real tight until that next morning. And the other thing that I had to do was most of my diet the day of the competition was all carbs. Because if you're eating, like, I used to use Uncrustables, you know, the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, because they were so easy to eat. I could eat 3 or 4 of them, and it was kind of like eating candy. But they had a little bit of peanut butter, a little bit of bread, a little bit of jelly. So carbohydrate was the big trick to me being able to eat, because it was very small, pretty dense, full of calories, and I could blast it in real quick. What were some of the things that you went to eat on meat day?
My go-to for meat days, finding something I could absolutely eat no matter what, was bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches. I'd get up the morning of the meet. I'd scramble some eggs or fry some eggs up, some extra, make pre-prep me some sandwiches, and have them ready to go. And it seems kind of weird, but that's what worked for me, you know. And I would always load my backpack full of Snicker candy bars. So if I really needed something, I would have to force it. And majority of the time, it was forcing it.
Carbs.
I had to do that because, like, my stomach wouldn't allow me to just, you know, eat gracefully, or however you want to put it. So I would always try to keep small things like that, and even loading up. And I know it bloats you, but Sprite. I could drink Sprite just to get those. Sprite and oranges was my go-to also, just to be able to get those both kinds of sugars in, and hopefully that I wouldn't faint before I hit the platform.
And that's what he's saying is the same thing I'm saying is, carbohydrate's your best friend during meet day because it triggers more hunger, and you usually get a decent amount of calories in pretty quick, so it's causing more hunger. And that's the same thing I use when I want to gain or lose weight. All I do is so right now I haven't had any orange juice for 30 days. When I want to start making myself hungrier, I add in a little bit of orange juice every meal, and I'm starving every 2 hours. When I cut the orange juice out, it drops my appetite. So if you're having trouble eating at competitions, whether you're full power or bench only, you want to start adding a lot of carbohydrates in through the day, especially some simpler sugars, and it's going to allow you to kind of stay a little bit more hungry.
Also, the night before.
Yeah.
The night before, I mean, it just depends, but for me, I had to load up on carbs the night before. Go ahead and prepare my body, get my body ready for the next day. Even though it's not as strenuous on my body as I would say a full power lifter, but I'm still giving everything I have. So max effort that day, mentally, physically, and usually after, like, my body feels like I got hit by a truck.
Yeah, and
so I can't imagine what you feel.
But you got to remember too. I mean, on the other end of that spectrum is you're bench pressing a weight that most people would love to squat.
Yeah,
and that's where a lot of people will never understand that. I mean, when I bench 6'11", I remember doing that after squatting 870, the all-time world record, and I remember putting that in my hands, going, Jesus Christ, I don't know how guys do anything around 700 pounds.
Well, also too, I was so close to the all-time world record at the time that there was no point for me to even focus on doing a full power meet. We're so close to breaking this record. It's like, why not? Why aren't we focusing all the energy? Because I wanted to do full power at one point, and Josh kept me in bounds by saying, look, we're so close to this world record, which is going to be life-changing. We need to focus and put everything we have into bench press. And I still feel that is probably one of the best decisions I've made. And in the future, I do look into at least doing one full power meet before I go into strongman. But it's
you'll be interesting because you'll see the differences in how the prep of the entire day goes. But I think the biggest transition points is you have to slowly ramp yourself up to squat. Then you need to get out of the environment somehow, whether if it's at a hotel and you got a hotel room or your car, get out of that environment and tune down a little bit, get your anxiety down low. That way you can eat some more fuel, try to get a little bit of rest, and then re-ramp yourself back up. And that's the advantages to doing a bench-only competition if you really want to push your bench press, is the fact that it allows you to ramp up and stay there for an hour and you're done. Almost very similar to how we work out, right? Because nobody works out like a full power guy, where you're going to squat in the morning, bench in the afternoon, and deadlift in the evening.
Well, I have done that. So last year after the animal cage, bench press, maybe it was the year before, I bench pressed 700 pounds in the animal cage. Then from there, we had a decent amount of time. It wasn't scheduled. We went to Westside and I pulled 730 and squatted 700. So, and that's not even in my program. I don't even train for it.
Yeah.
So I know the capacity's there, the potential's there, but that's one of those things we talked about, prepping mentally. I wasn't expecting to do it, and I went in and spur of the moment, I did it. So
and that was one of the big things we talked about. Like when I was competing, that's exactly what I did to train for comp. So we had a little bit of a different mindset on certain things. And sometimes he used my mindset, sometimes I used his mindset, depending on the game of chess we were playing with ourselves that day. And what I found is that I had to walk into a workout and almost trick myself into thinking, hey, this is a light day, I'm not going to do anything that hard, let's just get through the warm-up and see how I feel. I remember tricking my brain into doing that, and those were some of the best workouts I ever had. Whereas if I sat and I stewed on what I had to do, by the time I got there, I was so anxiously wore out that it made the workout rougher.
No, I had to stew on it from the time that Josh would send my programming over, still to today. From the time he sends my programming over, I fixate on that every single day. So I meditate on it. I think about it. For example, this week we have 525 for 10 sets, 5 reps. And I've just been thinking about just the whole process from the setup. We're talking about the first rep. We're talking about maintaining speed throughout the whole set.
Which we're going to do more videos on.
We're going to do more videos on that also. But just that I had to fixate. And another thing is there's been studies that have actually that been took where you've had groups of athletes that actually, for example, there was a study done in Chicago where they took a basketball team and they had one group actually practice their free throws. They had another group that just over the week just mentally fixated on it and meditated on it throughout the week. And they had another group that didn't do anything, that didn't practice or even think about it. And it was actually proven that 20% of the guys that actually, the players that actually practice physically increased 20%. The ones that just fixated on it, just mentally prepared and just actually visualized themselves shooting the basketball and the ball going through the hoop, they increased 20%, and 22. The group that 22%, and the group that didn't increase at all.
A lot of that's going to depend on what your individual processes are. For me, training always created some anxiety, which probably was partially one of my downfalls to being the best I could be, is I had to trick my brain into not thinking about training and then coming in and then tricking my body into doing crazy things. And I think if I would have taken more of a Maddox's approach where I could focus on that without it creating anxiety. So the point is that if you're a person where you can focus on training but it doesn't create anxiety or a feeling of, gosh, I have to do this today, and you can make it a positive, it's probably a huge advantage. But if you're more like me, where training got to be so strenuous by the latter end of my career, pushing those records, that I almost had to trick my body into coming into the gym and doing stuff it didn't want to do.
Well, I caught myself, so I mean, it's just that, like we talked about the mental war. I caught myself trying not to fixate on the lifts, and it just seemed like I would miss lift after lift because I wasn't taking it that serious. So even though I prepared, like I'm coming to the gym, I'm doing the same things, I just feel like mentally I wasn't preparing myself to get ready and prep to go to war. You know, does that make sense?
It does.
So I had to, get to this place where I figured out I'm not just coming to the gym just to get through the workout. Like every single rep matters. Every rep counts.
Yep.
So I have to have that mental awareness even before I go into the gym, that I'm taking and I'm putting all effort, energy towards whatever lift I'm doing that day. So I mean,
so if you can do that and you can keep your body in a positive mindset, by all means use that meditation point, focus on what you're trying to do. Now the other thing that we already talked about a couple of times, the last few times we've been up, is it's learning to control your external stressors. So if Maddox, say, starts to cut back his work and his jobs and he's got his family life controlled, and like for me, I kept everything low stress outside of the gym, it was easier for me to put that more focus into the actual competition. What we find is a lot of people contact us and go, hey, I work third shift on a factory and I'm on my feet 12 hours a day and I'm going to bench 500 pounds. Is that possible? And the answer is going to be good luck, because it's really hard. The point is that you can use training as a stressor as long as other stressors are very low or non-existent. Whereas a lot of people, they want to add stressor after stressor, and then they wonder why the training doesn't work.
So example of stressors I would say would be, again, your job, having a strenuous job, your kids, the people you surround yourself with. A lot of people bring that negativity to the table, and they're just very toxic. You have to keep, in drama, big time, you have to keep those type of things out of the picture if you want to ultimately reach your goals and sustain and have a long powerlifting career, or whatever it is that you're training for, your goals. Mm-hmm. About 3 years ago, I got to a point, it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, where my stressors were at an all-time high, and I didn't know no better, and I kind of, talked to Josh about it, and he was just, saying, we didn't put it in the terms of stressors, but he was just talking about, you probably got so much going on in your life, it's draining you. And I just realized, married with kids, I had 2 jobs at the time, and it was just, and I was trying, and even though I was doing bench only, it was tearing me to pieces. Like I almost quit powerlifting about 2 years ago, right before I broke the world record. I remember just sitting there, and I'm sweating at the same time, so people really didn't notice, but it really wasn't sweat, it was tears coming down my face, simply because I was so stressed out. But I'm a mental person when it comes to visualizing my goals and lifts. So that battle of I know that I'm so close and I'm on the brink of doing something great, but it was taken away also from my programming because I had such a full plate. My plate was so full, and I was still trying to find that balance. Yeah. And also too, don't forget, is your extracurricular activities outside of the gym and outside of home. So drug use, drinking alcohol, all these different things will ultimately play a role in your training.
And that's the big thing, I think, wrapping up, is you guys have to understand that training is a full spectrum. You got to look at all your stressors. You got to make sure your nutrition's correct. You got to make sure your rest is correct. You got to make sure that all of those things are a low level so that the training can be a stressor. So I did the best I could at controlling those things while maintaining a business and a job. Same thing with Maddox. And what we figured out is that you have to understand that training in general is a stressor, and you have to learn to keep all the other stressors down if you want to push that particular stressor harder. Now, the way to do that is to train smart, learn how to use rest periods correctly, learn how to space your training out correctly, utilize a lot of the top level guys that understand all of the physiology behind training to push it to the max. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out with a series. We're going to come out with a bench press DVD. We're going to come out with a bench press manual to help you guys actually train smart, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and a lot of this stuff will be applied in the manual. So stay tuned on WenningStrength.com and IrregularStrength.com, and we're going to throw you guys some mad stuff, but we hope that this kind of tapped into making you look at your entire training as a whole, as a person, versus just, hey, look, what's the bench press program? Because that's only a piece of what it's going to take to get good.